Like most Loyalist first founding chapters, the Raven Guard are viewed as faithful servants of the Emperor of Mankind and protectors of the Imperium of Man. These agile and cunning warriors would gladly lay down their lives in order to achieve victory for humanity. But this sentiment wasn't always shared by the forces of the Imperium of Man, especially early on when the chapter was a legion-strong force, only known as the 19th Legion. The 19th Legion developed a negative reputation amongst their non-Astartes battle brothers. The many regiments of the Imperial Army learned to cautiously march alongside the Raven Guard, for they would not hesitate to spend thousands of human lives if it meant victory, a chilling fact that still has some truth in the current millennium. Their war cry alone is enough to remind friend and foe alike. Victoris aut mortis, meaning victory or death. And with that said, I want to welcome you guys back to another 40 Facts about the 40K universe. I am your host, Gersh1, and today we're going to be talking about the horrible realities of the Raven Guard. If you guys are new to the channel, we post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. If you guys have suggestions or have any questions about the 40K universe, just let me know what it is in the comment section below, and I will try to answer it for you guys. If you guys enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. It is because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with all that said, let's get into 40 facts on the horrible realities of the Raven Guard. One of the terrible actions that solidified the Raven Guard's horrible reputation amongst the forces of the Imperium of Man occurred before the 19th Legion united with their Primarch. It was known as the Battle of Hell's Anvil. The Battle of Hell's Anvil was typical of many of the 19th Legion's early engagements. It created a savage legend that their Primarch Corvus Corax would later seek to repress. One that exemplified both the similarities in tactics and the differences in character of the warriors that made up the 19th Legion and later the Raven Guard. Hell's Anvil was the name given to a massive fortress situated on the planet of Baratrum. For almost 5 years, the Imperial Army had fought a futile battle to destroy the overseers of that planet. They had since surrendered their humanity, and capturing the world's prodigious mineral wealth was important for the new Imperium. Thousands of lives had been spent, and yet the Imperial Army was unable to secure any foothold in the sunken metropolises of Baratrum. Eventually, a fleet arrived, bearing 3 full chapters of the 19th Legion, under overall command of the Shadelord, Arkas Val, the master of the Legion at that time. Accompanied by a sizable contingent of the Luna Wolves, the force changed the nature of the campaign. The Task Force strike cruiser began a concussive bombardment directly above the previously unassailable subsurface fortifications of Hell's Anvil, heedless of the collateral damage to the planet's subterranean population. The massive tectonic force of the bombardment shook the planet to its core, causing severe damage to many of their underground cities. Into this hellish landscape, Shadelord Fowl ordered 3 regiments of the Thorsian Vultugers, a unit attached to the Imperial Army detachment that had so far failed to assault the fortress. It would be their job to lead the vanguard assault. Soon they were beset upon by hundreds of frenzied worker drones, with casualties mounting and the fortress still spewing forth its berserker defenders. A desperate request was sent to the 19th Legion for reinforcements. It went completely unanswered. Waiting until Hell's Anvil had been emptied, the combined Space Marine Task Force descended into the bowels of Hell's Anvil. The Headhunter Company of the Ashen Claws chapter, led by Shade Captain Corinne, were able to hack and blast its way into the interior of the beleaguered fortress. They ruthlessly hacked down the hulking overseers. After hours of fighting, the 19th Legion finally discovered Hell's Anvil's titanic plasma reactors. After facing the largest of the overseers still alive, they planted melta charges amongst the reactor's delicate containment fields and retreated as suddenly as they had struck, back into the upper levels to detonate the charge. On the surface, Shadelord Fowl and his forces had put the frenzied drones to the sword. The destruction of Hell's Anvil saw the swift collapse of the planet's resistance, and despite the damage that various factory wardens had sustained, the envoys of the Mechanicum were able to restart production with only a minor delay, feeding the Imperium's expansion and continued conquests. Sadly, the Imperial Army regiments bore the brunt of the assault's bloody cost, losing over 100,000 soldiers, whereas the 19th Legion and the Luna Wolves only suffered a few hundred casualties between them, mostly amongst the Ashen Claws. This cost, though high, was less than might have been expected from a drawn-out siege, and the battle was lauded as a mighty victory for the advancing crusade. It also established the reputation of the 19th Legion as the harbingers of death for those units of the Imperial Army assigned to their support. This remnant of their heritage as slave masters and raiders in the dust plains of old Earth did not find favor with the Raven Lord when he joined the 19th Legion, and this practice was only forgotten, both within and without the Legion, after long years of campaigning under Corvus Corax's guidance. But even once reunited with their Primarch, the Legion at first suffered another terrible stain of their illustrious history. It was known as the Carinate Retribution. The conquest of the Carinate sodality remains a black mark on the records of the Raven Guard, a campaign whose details, long suppressed by the factions within the Official Militaris, shows the Raven Guard as directly responsible for the campaign's delay and the excessive casualties recorded by the Imperial Army units assigned to them for fighting. The Raven Guard task force arrived in the Carinate system with a force of almost 30,000 legionnaires, and twice that number of soldiers of the Imperial Army. They made swift progress with the conquest of the Thousand Moons of Carinate, immense void cities that circled the otherwise planetless primary, remnants of a power long lost to mankind, whose isolationist inhabitants were ill-disposed to bend the knee to the Emperor. Directed by the keen tactical acumen of Corvus Corax, the Raven Guard turned the Carinate's greatest strength into a fatal weakness, for though the void cities were many and their defenses strong, each fought a solitary war, separate from aid and unable to support the defense of their fellows. Rather than attempt a grand campaign, besieging the entire star system at once, or challenging the combined fleet of the Carinate sodality for void supremacy in the system, the Raven Guard used mobility and stealth to strike a single moon at a time. It was on one such moon, designated as Zenith 3112, that the combined task force assaulted in good order. All was well, until the city's Arc Comptroller unleashed a terrible weapon from the Age of Strife, long held in stasis in the depths of its city. An enigma phage of terrible potency that rendered men into creatures of rage and hunger, devoid of all reason and memory. The Raven Guard suffered little ill effects, but the ordinary citizens of Zenith 3112 and the mortal soldiers of the Imperial Army were reduced to frothing, mindless hordes that numbered in the tens of thousands. Immediately, the Raven Guard found themselves beset on all sides, and were forced to put down those that they once called allies. They granted them the mercy of death, as the 19th Legion swept the Void City clean. In the aftermath of the fighting, it was discovered that the Arc Comptroller had used the massacre of his own people to make good his escape aboard his personal shuttle. The Raven Lord was incensed, and vowed that the Arc Comptroller would be forced to account for his actions. The task force abandoned the persecution of Carinate's conquest, and instead focused all of its effort into locating the escaped Arc Comptroller. Discovering the object of their wrath, he was tracked to a remote outpost, drifting in the outer reaches of the star's boundaries. The Raven Guard turned to its Morid kill cadre to bring murderous vengeance to the Arc Comptroller. Once aboard, the Morid quickly went on the offensive and methodically began to leave a bloody trail of corpses in their wake. Making no attempt to reach the Arc Comptroller, the surviving kill cadre made their way to the lone hangar and destroyed all of the station's transports except for one to make good for their escape. The Void Station was then pushed towards the system's star. It took over 4 solar hours to fully break up, as the sun's fiery embrace blistered and seared the station's hull plating. Corvus Corax stood and listened for all 4 hours, as the Arc Comptroller raged and blustered, and finally pleaded over open Vox channels, only leaving when the station molten collapse cut off his final screams. The Raven Guard had avenged their sacrifice on Zenith 312, but in doing so, had granted the remainder of Carinate's defenders time to consolidate their defenses. And without their support, the Imperial Army fleet had suffered badly as they attempted to hold the line. The Carinate campaign, which should have been swift and painless for the expanding Imperium, would rumble on for almost another 7 solar months, and would cost many thousands of lives, as the price of the 19th Legion's need for retribution. And those were 40 facts on the horrible realities of the Raven Guard. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have suggestions for any other topics of 40K that you guys would like us to cover, like I said in the beginning, let me know what it is in the comment section below, and I'll try to create a video for you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.